Good morning. Thank you for coming to the 12th Annual Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial. We're glad that you could all come. We're sorry about the parking. We understand there's quite a few events happening today, but we really do appreciate you showing up. As I said, this is the 12th Annual Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial, and I'd like to introduce Tom Derringer at this time.
Thank you. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. Before we recognize our Lord and Savior in a formal manner in the invocation, I'd like to go back and recognize former pioneers that have been inducted into the Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial. If you would join with me, it's in the back of your program, about the third page back. And let's just take a minute and reflect on their lives and the impact that athletics had on their lives as they went through life, learning and growing, maturing, and have an impact on our society. I'd ask you to join with me. I'm going to introduce them as a class. The very first class, 1966, Jim Clark, Fred Woodruff, Nicky Dreesen, Fred Lawson, Brad Holt, and Drew Williams. 1977 class, Tommy Nicholson, Sonny Keys, Kenny Gallagher Jr., Bruce Gray, Pat Haggerty, Tom Hudson. 1998 class was Bill Platt, George Moore, Charles Esslinger, Kendall King, Gary Rippey, and Rick Belatti. 1999 class was Glenn Ward, John Thatcher, Jerry York, Bob Cutter, Randy Maddox, and Duane Childers. 2000 class, Gus Dupree, Coach Floyd Caldwell, Coach Bob White, Chip Myers, Sam Satterfield, and Max Mitchell. 2001 class, Chilton Swank, Bob Murphy, Winslow Bilyeu, Dean Birch, Max Stites, and Dr. George Gathers. 2002 class, Kenny Gallagher, Lee Snyder, Eddie Bunch, Bill Henderson, Paul Mooney, and Dana Cleverton. 2003 class, Leon Tedder, Max Johnson Sr., Jim Sloan, Carl Fry, Coach Ralph Hamilton, Coach Jim Harris. 2004 class was Peyton Glass, Jack Shelton, Melvin Hemphill, Joe Canaday, Joe Jarvis, and Tousley Lewis. 2005 class was J.D. Cheek, Buddy Andrews, Jim Barnes, Tom Curd, Scott Dudley. And last year's class was John Gillum, Bernie Dorman, Bob Hillier, Richard Ingham, and John Bradley. Now at this time, if John Talley would come forward and lead us in the opening prayer.
Would you please bow with me? Lord Jesus, thank you for another wonderful day. Thank you for the opportunity we have to live in a country where we can do almost anything. We thank you for athletics, and Lord, we're sorry that sometimes we let them play too big a part in our lives. But we thank you for these people that represent the heart and soul of this great city. Lord, thank you for the privilege I've had to know so many of these people. Lord, as we lift up the inductees today, I pray that it would remind us that we don't know how long we have to live on this earth, and that we should live with full gusto toward you. Lord, thank you for loving us in spite of ourselves, and thank you for opportunities like this. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, John. First thing I probably should say is to let you all know, some of you might be a little concerned that Coach Harris is in the group that we introduced. Obviously, he's a special inductee. He's still with us. I would like to introduce a few honored guests that we have in our presence. We're glad they could be here. I would like the mayor of Stillwater, class of 1965, Roger McMillan, to stand up, please, sir. The mayor. Thank you, Roger. Also with us today, and has been a great help with us, obviously, the Stillwater High School athletic supporter, the Stillwater High School athletic director, Mike Simpson. Mike, are you here? He is also, we have the thank you, Mike. We have basketball coach Chick Davis is here. Chick, right? I saw you, Chick, somewhere. Come on, get up there. Gary Garner, is Gary here? Baseball coach Gary. Thank you, Gary. And Doug Chesbro. Come on, stand up. He's shy. Are there any other coaches that I have missed? Oh, well, I missed him on purpose. Kent Grant is the assistant wrestling coach. Thank you, Kent. I'm sorry, Kent, you know that. No, okay. Also today, I want to thank, and he's not here, I don't think, but Larry Francis helped set this up, and I want to say especially thank you to him because he did a wonderful job. Obviously, everybody can hear. It's a great stage, and we'd like to thank Quality Plants for the flowers that made it special for us. We appreciate that. We also would like to let you know that one of the reasons that we do this is to present our scholarship, and I think we should have to make you know that Jim Harris is here. The man who came up with the idea for Stillwater Pioneer Athlete Memorial and the scholarship that we give out was Coach Harris's idea. Coach, please stand up. We have been fortunate enough to, with wonderful support from you all and friends of the Pioneers, we have now given out scholarships for several years. I'm going to read the names real quick. Josh Thompson, Morgan Gottfried, Rachel Monton, Aaron Fairbanks, Cole Bunch, Matthew Paget, Kelsey Cruz, and Brian Zanotelli have been our scholarship winners. And everyone that goes thanks us, and they're all wonderful kids, and it's incredible to see them go on and what they do with themselves. Brian Zanotelli was going to be with us today to tell you what kind of kid he is. He called me last night and said, I have an opportunity to work a double shift today and I need the money. Would it be possible for me not to go to the ceremony? I said, it's fine. We'll take your scholarship away. No, we let him have half. But we do have Kelsey Cruz, last year's winner. Kelsey is back there. You've got to stand up. You said you would. This is last year's 2006 winner, Kelsey Cruz. She's at Oklahoma State University in theater performance, right? Very good. All right. Now we're going to get into the program. Our first presenter, our first inductee is Bruce Andrew, class of Stillwater 1957. And I think Bruce would be extremely pleased that two of his classmates came to be the presenters. And I think he would find it wonderful that it took two presenters to present him. That at this time, Keith Thomas and Stan Ward will present Bruce Andrew.
I want to welcome you all to the Mike and Mike show.
Keith's gonna let me go first, the first time he's ever let me do it. We are really honored to be here today to honor Bruce. Common people went to Stillwater High School, and a lot of uncommon people. Bruce Andrew was really one of those uncommon guys. Why was he so uncommon? Because he was just a tremendous athlete. a tremendous competitor, tremendous friend. And I think you think of Bruce, you think of a kid that we lived on the west side of town, he lived on the east side of the town. And from little bitty kids, we had to compete against him, and he was always beating the dickens out of us. We got to junior high school, and we all got together, and we realized what a competitor Bruce was. And Bruce was one of these guys that had great hands, great ability, great competitive spirit. Do you realize that he was the first guy that ever was the player of the year in Oklahoma high school baseball from Stillwater? He was the shortstop on the first and only, I guess, Coach, I heard your name out here, the only Stillwater High School state champion baseball team. Then Bruce went on to OSU and starred with his brother Bobby. And the Andrews boys were that great double play combination, shortstop and second base. And Bruce went on to be a college All-American, and guess what? The only time OSU has ever won a baseball national championship, who was the spark plug on that team? Bruce. He didn't stop there with athletics because he played professional baseball. He went on after he retired from being a professional athlete, and he became a scout, a Major League Baseball scout, and a tremendous baseball scout. I've heard it say that he had a big part in the Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, and some of the other common household names that you've grown up with in terms of the more contemporary baseball players. But Bruce was one of those kinds of guys that you say that in life you meet, there's only three kinds of people. Those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. Well, I want to tell you something. Bruce was category one all the way. He made things happen as an athlete, as a teammate, as a classmate, as a citizen. When an infirmity took over in Bruce's life later on, he lost his eyesight. Didn't slow him down a bit. His dear friend and double play combination at Stillwater High School, Dr. Stockard, played golf with him a few years ago when Bruce was blind. Still couldn't beat him, and Rex is a dadgum good golfer. But he would just say, "Where's the ball?" He would hit it right down the middle. That's just the way he played life, right down the middle. And so I'm just really pleased to have this opportunity to acknowledge Bruce for the person that he was. I can't think of an inductee that would bring greater honor to Stillwater High School, to the bronze and blue, than Bruce Andrew. Thank you.
You know, that's a tough act to follow. Usually I've been out here so many times that I like to poke a little fun at the inductee. But Bruce is one of those people that he was so dedicated, so motivated, that there's very little to poke fun at. He's a very serious man. He had objectives and goals in life, and by golly, he achieved them. And this is the wonderful thing. I'm so proud that he was in the class of 1957, because Stan and I were, and there's a bunch of people here today that were in the class of 57, and we think it's a pretty special class. And I'm going to tell you something. We're going to miss Bruce. We missed Tommy Chesbro. These were an integral part of our 57 class. We're going to have our 50th reunion in October. And, I can't imagine where all the years went. But Stan pretty well covered about Bruce. But he was, I remember Sandy told me as we came in that Coach Martin Loper, who's deceased, told her one time that Bruce Andrew was the most competitive athlete that he ever coached in his life. This guy was driven. I told Bruce's brother Bob this morning, who I just idolized when I was a kid because he was the best high school athlete I thought I ever saw. I told him, I said, "Bobby, If you'd have worked out and practiced like Bruce did, you'd have been in the Hall of Fame. Bruce worked hard. Everything he got was through effort, and I admire him so much. You know, he went to California when he was scouting for the big leagues, and got that blindness, and he came back to Oklahoma and to Stillwater because he couldn't take care of himself. And he and Sandy had been divorced years before, and she found out about him coming back, got back taking care of him, and they got remarried. And I want you to know that the last 8 years of Bruce's life were spent with Sandy, the most wonderful years of his life, and hers as well. And, you know, Stan, we talk a lot about, you know, how competitive Bruce was, but, you know, he had a lot of other qualities, too. He was an extremely loyal person. Loved his family, loved his brothers, loved his wife. You know, he was extremely loyal to his family. He loved his friends. I knew he loved me. I knew he loved his classmates. You know, and this is a wonderful thing. I want to share one thing with you. About 2 days before Bruce passed on, he was in the hospital. In the last few months, he'd been in and out of the hospital, and he wasn't doing well. And I talked with Sandy, and I said, Sandy, do you think it'd be okay if I'd come out to see Bruce while he's in the hospital? She said, no, don't. He's just so weak, you just don't do it. I said, well, do you think I could talk to him by phone? Well, he might be strong enough to talk on the phone. So I said, Bruce, this is Keith. He says, I said, how are you doing? And he says, in this real low whisper, he says, I think I'm doing better. And I thought, here's a guy that's going to die, and he's still fighting. He hadn't give up yet. I thought, what a wonderful tribute to our man, you know? And then he says, and you take care of yourself. To the very end, he was reaching out to other people to help them. I'm going to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you coming this morning. I hope we've made some sense. I hope you have a little bit better understanding about Bruce Andrew and how we feel about him. And Sandy wrote a little letter, and she ended up said, Bruce is missed. Bruce is missed. Bruce is missed. Thank you for putting up with us.
Our presenter for Coach Chesbro is Dennis Crowe. Dennis came from somewhere, I don't know, Oregon, I think, to wrestle at Oklahoma State University. And Dennis became close friends and was the coach the wrestling coach for Stillwater High School right after Coach Chesbro. And so Dennis knows Pioneer Pride. I mean, he knows the wrestling program, the history, and I believe, I know, we think it's pretty true, that his squad of 1970 was a state champion wrestling team in Oklahoma, and we believe that's the only state champion wrestling team in the history of Stillwater. So, presenting Tommy Chesbro is Dennis Crowe.
Thank you. I got to clear up one point there. Tommy Chesbro had a state championship team when he was coaching at Stillwater High School, and then I had one. But so it definitely wasn't the only state championship Stillwater High School's ever had. And it's, I got to admit, Ed, I was kind of anxious about coming back to Stillwater High School. It's been a number of years since I've been in this building, and it's changed a lot, and it's just neat seeing all it's kind of like going to a high school reunion. I've seen a lot of people today I hadn't seen in a long time, so that's nice. But I consider myself extremely lucky to be asked to honor Tommy Chesbro and talk about him and present this memorial. There are so many stories that could be told about Tommy. I mean, just numerous stories about his great coaching accomplishments, about about the love of the sport of wrestling. But most of you already know about all those accomplishments. The fact that you know that he touched thousands of young kids, not just here in Stillwater or at OSU, but all across the United States.
he was helping and touching kids. So what I'd really like to do today is maybe just share a few stories that maybe you don't know about Tommy. But if you know Tommy, you know he was a driver in the fact that he drove everywhere he went. And he drove and he drove. He hated to stop, okay? Just always trying to get an extra mile in there before he had to get gas. And yes, he didn't even stop for gas. He would run out of gas numerous times in some of the most bad locations. I've unfortunately been with him a couple times on those trips. And we'd be walking somewhere in the middle of the night because he didn't want to stop. You know, it didn't matter if he was driving to the city or to Montana or New York, he was going to keep driving. And if you question any of this, just ask Shirley or ask my wife Bev or the boys or Jay Arneson or anybody else that's ever ridden with him, and they'll pretty well verify anything I'm saying here, I believe. But if you ever needed to, like something to drink or something to eat, or God forbid you needed to go to the restroom, you better have taken care of that before you got in the car. Because he wasn't going to stop. There was a few trips where I really thought somebody in the back of the van was going to crawl up to the front and choke him to death. But didn't happen. Tommy loved to hunt and he loved to fish. He's probably been on every farm pond in Payne County and most of the other counties around here, and some of them maybe he shouldn't have been on. We were duck hunting one day. Pulled up to a pond. Actually, we were kind of what they call pond jumping. We were going from pond to pond looking for ducks. Pulled up next to this one pond, really looked nice. Nice little wooded area back there. And right next to where we parked, there was a big sign on the fence, no trespassing, no hunting. I said, Tommy, do you know who owns this property? He says, oh yeah, I know him. It's okay. So we go hunting, and we're walking back toward the car, and there's a gentleman that owned the property standing there next to my car with a gun pointed at us. Pretty well had us convinced we were going to get shot that particular day. And finally, after he chewed on us for quite some time, he let us go. And as far as I know, we never went back to that particular pond. I didn't anyway. Tommy may have over the years. But another time we were duck hunting again in the middle of the winter. And we found this pond up north of town here a little bit, kind of on a knoll, and no trees out there, no brush, nothing to camouflage yourself, and we knew that the ducks would come in there early in the morning. So we decided, all right, we'll get up real early. So we get up way before daylight, go trudging through the snow, yes, snow, colder than heck, dug a little holes in the snow so we could lay down in it, covered up with snow so we could hide from these famous ducks going to come in. Finally, the ducks did come in. We get up. We are so cold, we cannot pull the triggers on our guns. We didn't get any ducks that day either. Actually, we went hunting a lot and didn't get ducks, but that's part of the deal. Really, I had, when Shirley asked me to do this, I thought, all right, one of the first things I'm going to do, I'm going to wear blue jeans, all right? Because, by golly, that's what Tommy had had on if he had been here today, and they told me I had to dress up a little bit. But anyway, so I don't have blue jeans on, but if I did, or if he had been here today, he had blue jeans on, and they'd have been size 32, okay? That's the size that he wore probably when he was coaching here 40-some years ago, and it's still the size today he had on. Now, as you know, some of us adjust in weight or figures a little bit over the years, and Tommy did some of that back and forth, and even though at times he might have needed a 42, he still had a 32. They were just a little lower, okay? But he did it. Probably one of Tommy's greatest assets or best assets was the fact that he treated everybody the same. It really didn't matter if you had a lot of money or didn't have any money, or where you were from or who you were. It just didn't matter. Everybody was an equal to Tommy. I was visiting with actually a friend of his that works in another department at Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago. We met on a golf course, and we're visiting, telling stories about Tommy and laughing, and he says, things have really changed. He says, it's really a shame, he says, but things are different. He says, it used to be when Tommy would call and needed something done at the university, I guarantee our entire department would jump through hoops to get that done, because we knew that Tommy would do the same thing for us when we called him. And that's just the kind of guy he was. He was always trying to help somebody, always. I can tell you a lot about Tommy. I can tell you he loved fishing, he loved hunting, he loved Stillwater, and he loved Oklahoma State University. But most of all, he loved and was very, very proud of Shirley, Tommy Ray, Doug, and Todd, and their families. Loved spending time with his grandkids and his mom, Ladora, and their siblings and their families, and Shirley's family. Probably his greatest pleasures was spending time with family and friends.
Clint's a lifelong Stillwater person, and he's going to be presenting Richard Hume, who is his classmate. Clint is a legend in Stillwater in a lot of ways. I was trying to think of something nice to say about Clint, and one thing that I can remember is that those of you who went through Coach Caldwell's PE class, that he made you climb that stupid rope, which if you were real skinny and didn't have any muscle tone, your hands just got bloody, and your thighs where the rope would burn would get pink. I mean, it's just terrible. But Clint could climb that rope. And one day we went out, and Clint Cook was going to be in, and he was going to climb the rope. And I don't want to say he was fast, but he was up and down while all the seventh graders were looking up. He was done. That's his legend. Clint.
Keith and I get up the stairs same way. Good job, Tommy. I've been asked to speak for Richard Hume, which is a huge honor for me. Met Richard, I believe, the 9th grade when he moved down here from Ponca City. We wrestled together through the rest of junior high and all of high school. He did a lot better job of it than I did. And went on, spent a lot of time together in college and for the few years that he was here before he moved on to Dallas. As it turns out, when I was putting this together, started contacting some of the classmates and says, tell me a Richard Hume story. And it was unbelievable how many different, totally different stories. You know, sometimes you go, well, he was a hell of a guy, or he was this. Everybody had a different story, a warm story about what they remembered about Richard. But it all came down to a super guy. If you were down, go find Richard. He'll get you back up again. If you don't think you can do something, go find Richard. He'll show you how to get it done. He was just that type of guy. A lot of us didn't end up knowing until later on how he could sing. He ended up in a band in college, and they were fairly successful. He did most of his stuff in wrestling. I mean, that's what we all knew of him. And if it hadn't been for a horrible leg injury that he had had when he was in junior high, where a horse fell on his leg and just tore it up, there's no telling how good he really would have been. He was just somewhat limited. But a baseball player, people didn't like playing catch with him. He'd hurt you catching the ball. Basketball player, as we were talking a while ago when it was mentioned, the wrestlers would come out and shoot baskets with the high school basketball players, and they didn't like playing with Richard. Of course, he wasn't, at least then, he wasn't but about this big, and he just ate them alive. He could do so many things and do them so well. He goes on and becomes a banker. One of the people I was talking to this morning about says, man, what a good banker he was. After banking here for a while, he goes down and is involved in a huge savings and loan conglomerate down there, I think. And I remember him calling me one time when we were talking about it, and he says, savings and loans in Texas are going to implode. Of course, I wasn't very smart. I didn't know what he was talking about. He says, just watch. There's a bunch of shenanigans going on down here. took about 2.5 years before his story came to reality, but in fact it had. He was really sharp in almost everything he did. I encourage you to read the little article that's in the handout about him. It says a little more. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and set a couple little stories. One, he and I were coaching Little League wrestling together. I might be considered somewhat hot-headed in those days. Well, as any coach knows, especially with Little League kids, some of the parents didn't exactly appreciate the way we did a few things. And in some tournament here, there was a parent that was very unhappy with, and I don't remember what, but he was making a fool out of himself as far as I was concerned. And I thought it was my duty to take him outside and show him, the right way to do things. Richard saw what I was getting ready to do. I'm not sure I could have done what I was getting ready to do, but Richard saw what I was getting ready to do, and this guy was hot. Now, we're 18, 19-year-old kids, and this was, now a youngster at 30-something-year-old man. And Richard says, he saw what I was getting ready to do, he just, let me talk to him. I look over there about 3 minutes later, and he's got the guy laughing. And they're the best buddies. That's the type of guy he was. He could just work his way out of something and talk to people. His personality was just phenomenal.
Some of you probably came specifically to see our president put on this program, Matt Devlin. Matt's not here today. His wife is about to give birth to their 4th child. 4 kids, you'd think he'd know. I mean, what's the big deal? Our next inductee is Jimmy Shields, and the presenter is going to be Steve Fleming. Steve and Jimmy were lifelong buddies, and I was trying to think of something that I could tell about Steve that wouldn't get us all in trouble, and he told me a story that I'd forgotten about, but I think it's what really bonded Jimmy and Steve together. It's when we were sophomores in his football season, and after practice, at that time, you take a shower and get the dirt and sweat and everything off. And so the seniors took Jimmy and Steve and put them outside, naked. So I introduced now Steve Fleming.
Now, I'm supposed to be picturing you all naked because I'm very, very nervous. I think first I want to thank the Chesbros for crying because I've got my hanky. And I'm not sure I can get through this. Jim and I were buddies for 43 years, and we lost him last year. And it's been tough. I think about him every single day. Talk to him every day. I talked to him this morning, and he just kind of giggled when I told him what I had to do. But I am honored, Willie, to thank you very much for allowing me to introduce Jim to the Stillwater Pioneer Athletic Memorial. Jim wasn't a great athlete, but he was a great team player. He knew every play. He knew where he was supposed to be. He knew what he was supposed to do. He was a coach's player, and I think that's one of the reasons that him and Coach Harris bonded. Jim's full name is James Harris Shields, and obviously, Coach Harris had a connection. And in a minute, I'm going to tell a story about the exact moment in time I think Jim decided to be a coach. I asked Max, I said, well, what do I say? He said, well, tell some funny stories. And like Max, there's a ton of funny stories. I just can't tell them with all these children here. And Max said, well, I remember one thing about Jim. He was very tough. He'd dislocate his shoulder, he'd go to the sideline, he'd pop it back in and come back out and play. And I said, well, Max, that's not funny. But the story I want to tell was in 1966. It was our senior year for football. And I don't know if Coach Harris did this ever before or if he did it after, but he called the B team, the JV, the scout team, whatever. He called us, he nicknamed us the Blue Bullets. And that has hung around with me and Jim for 43 years. But every time we needed the scraggly kids to play against the varsity, these guys back here, these big guys, Coach Harris would yell, hey, Blue Bullets. And here we'd all come waddling out. I wasn't as big as I am now, but so we'd waddle out there, and this one particular day, it was probably a Wednesday, we were running the opponent's offense. And I remember this so vividly. So all the blue bullets, me and Jim, there's not any other blue bullets here. Oh, Bobby Stites was a blue bullet. No, you were a starter. Never mind, you were better than that. Let's see if there's no blue bullets here anyway. So we're running this offense, and Coach Harris is calling the offense against the number one defense. And I believe Coach Roberts was the defensive coach. So anyway, we're doing this goal line defense, and Coach Harris calls the play. We go out, we run the play, we score a touchdown. We scored a touchdown on Stillwater High School varsity team. And Coach Roberts just goes off. I mean, he is mad. He is yelling and screaming at us, not the defense that allowed us to score. So after all the yelling and screaming, we go back to the huddle. There's all these, little guys, me and Jim, and we're looking at Coach Harris, and, Coach Harris always had a little chew going, had a little dripping down the side. And he just smiled. He just grinned at us. And I think at that very second, James Harris Shields decided that he wanted to be a coach. And he became a coach, and he became a very good coach. But the single most important thing that Jim was about the kids. I mean, he wanted to win worse than anybody. He wanted to win as bad as Bruce. He wanted to win as bad as Tommy. But Jim cared more about the kids and developing those kids into becoming terrific adults. That was his whole focus. And I think that one day when Coach Harris made Coach James Harris Shields feel special, that's what Jim took away. Jim was a terrific pioneer. Jim was a terrific coach. Can't look that way. Jim was a terrific dad, a terrific grandfather, and the best friend I ever had. So I'm honored to introduce Jimmy H. to the Stillwater Pioneer Athletic Memorial.
Ex-athletes, friends, family getting together, and it's that pioneer pride that Stillwater has developed over the years that allows us to do things like this, to come back. And it doesn't matter if you're in the class of 57 or 67 or whatever, it's all the same. It's about pioneer pride, and it's really an honor to stand up here and listen to people talk about Bruce Andrews and Tommy Chesbro and Jimmy Shields and all the people that they've worked with and been friends with and competed with, and it's really a great deal, which is kind of what we're leading up to. Willie Welch is Jay Arneson will be the presenter, and Jay and I, he's much younger than I am, but I know that Jay has got that pioneer pride and represented Stillwater High School in a lot of ways, and was on a state championship team I'd forgotten about. And then he was also, dual wonderful athlete that he was on the only state champion high school football team in Stillwater history, and then goes on to OSU and becomes a member of Coach Chesbrough's championship team of 71. Sorry, Jay. At this time, I'd like to present Jay Arneson.
Thank you. Steve, I was a blue belt for 2 years. Dennis, all your stories on Tommy were true. Very proud to be here to present Willie Welch. Willie was my nephew, and for about a year, every time I come to Stillwater, I come in on Highway 51, and I come quite frequently, and I think about Tommy Chesbrough. There's a couple of ponds out there we used to sneak in and fish, and then when I get to Range Road, there's a memorial out there for Willie. So I think about those two every time I come to Stillwater. I'm glad you all cried too, because it's tough. I think it was inevitable for Willie to become a wrestler from the time he could focus. When he was a baby, every Christmas he saw a wrestling match in the living room. His mom, Susie, my sister, and I don't have any idea why, but every Christmas we ended up in a wrestling match. And she was pretty scrappy. And I'm not sure that Willie saw those matches, and I know he continued those matches with Susie. I don't know how old he was before he finally got to whip her. Willie was a wrestler and an athlete. That was important, that he was known as a wrestler and an athlete. His success wasn't measured in his wins and losses, but that he was there and was part of the team and was very honored to be part of the team. And the story that I talked to Doug Chesbrough, his coach, and his mom and dad, that everybody recalled was his senior night, the duel against Broken Arrow. And Broken Arrow, you know, went on a run for several years as the best team in the state in the class. And it was senior night, and the duel was coming towards the end, and Willie had a kind of a signature move. It wasn't your basic skill. It was a headlock. And the headlock was a really, move that drove the coaches crazy, because if you didn't get it early in the match, it wasn't a good chance of happening later, because you get a little slick because of the sweat. And Willie was going through the match, didn't get the headlock early, getting tired, and reverted back to some basic skills, hit a double leg, picked the kid up, took him to the mat, put a half Nelson in and pinned him. So that gave the team a chance to win the duel, and that was probably one of the proudest moments of his wrestling career. And no, they didn't win the duel, but it wasn't Willie's fault. In closing, the article in the program said that Willie wrote a poem in his English class, and it was one of the statements to the start and at the end was, "I am a wrestler and I am an athlete." So that was very important for Willie, and I know Willie and myself we're very proud to be pioneers.
Thank you all very much. Just a few closing remarks before we leave. I think this is just a wonderful ceremony. I've enjoyed doing this for 12 years now. I've got to tell you that from a spiritual standpoint, I'm a Christian. I just see God working in people's lives. And athletics is the venue that so many kids are touched in and impacted in, and lessons taught, lessons learned, skills learned, survival. All these things come out of athletics, and I think we take them into our lives, and these people that we honor here are ones that we've seen use these tools that they got out of athletics and have made this place a better place to live. And I just thank you, the ones that are family, for sharing with us. And I'm just so pleased that we're able to be a part of it. At this time, though, I want to hit you up for money. We do have a big part of our program as a scholarship, which we give each year. In the spring, we give a pioneer that has participated here at the high school in athletics and may not have an athletic scholarship or any other scholarship, an opportunity to apply, and we give them a $5,000 scholarship over 4 years to go to the school that they choose here in the state of Oklahoma. And we want to continue to do that, and we would like to increase and maybe do it to 2 or 3 pioneers each spring. So if you would be so inclined to help us with that aspect of the program, there are envelopes over on the table, and you can just drop them in there. There's also a nomination form if you know of a former pioneer that you think is deserving of this honor and would be a great member of this group that we've started. We would be tickled to have you fill that out and drop it in the mail or give it to one of the board members. We're just tickled that you're here. I hope you'll stay around. There's some refreshments in the back. We'd like to take pictures right over here. Ron Holt would like to get the presenters and the family and you know, give you something of today to remember. So at this time, we'll just consider this closed. Thanks for coming.